Hey guys, Tammy here, and today we're going to talk about a custody attorney's favorite answer, okay, or their favorite phrase, or their favorite response, or whatever word you want to use in there. But I find so often clients say they ask their attorneys a question, and this is many, many times the response, because as soon as I say, let me guess, this is how they responded, they go, oh, yes, exactly. So I know this comes a lot. And so I'm going to dive into it. We're going to talk about why you get this answer, and we're going to talk about maybe some ways that you can sort of dig in and get the real answer that you're looking for. Before we do that, let me just remind you, as always, if you're watching me on YouTube, don't forget to hit like and also subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released. And please share this on social media, okay? On whatever platform it is, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Feel free to share it on your channel. When we are talking to our attorneys, many, many times we'll ask a question like, why this? Why that? Or even better, something like, well, what do you think is going to happen on this? Or what do you think the outcome, what kind of parenting schedule do you think I'm going to end up with? Or, what do you think the judge is going to think about what the other parent's saying? Or what do you think is going to be done about my child's reactions to the transition? Whatever your question is, their favorite answer is, well, it depends. Okay, which is a very unsatisfying answer on our end, right? Because I don't want to hear it depends. I want to hear what is your thought process, or what is your, best guess, or whatever. And we just don't usually get that. And there's a few reasons for that, okay? The first thing I can tell you is attorneys ethically are not allowed to promise an outcome in your case, right? That's part of their code of conduct. That's part of their state bar rules. They are not allowed to promise an outcome in a case. That's the first reason that they're hesitant to do that. The second reason is because they're afraid of being sued. I mean, I think a lot of them worry about that. This is their livelihood. This is, everything's on the line. And if they get sued, their entire career could potentially be down the toilet. It's a very scary thing, that level of risk. I think it's probably similar for like doctors in malpractice. And so that's why they run all these tests and do all these objective things to figure out, the answers to the questions. But an attorney doesn't have the ability to do that in this situation, right? They're trying to guess what somebody else's thought process or feelings are going to be, and you can't really do that. So it's difficult in that respect. But the third reason that this happens is because that really is the answer. It really does depend on a lot of factors. It depends on what the judge feels is important. It depends on how you present the information. It depends on what the behaviors of both of the parties are. It depends on what issues the children are having. There's so many different factors that go into this that it really does depend. So when we're in that situation, like, what are we supposed to do? Well, part of the problem becomes you don't even know the correct question to ask, right? Because you don't get the detailed answer you're looking for because you don't know the exact right question to ask. So let's see if I can kind of create an example here on the fly. Let's say that you ask the attorney, okay, what are the chances that I'm going to end up with 50-50 custody in my case? Okay. And the attorney says, well, that depends. And you're like, And a better question is something along the lines of, what are the factors that the court looks at in determining custody? How many factors do you think I have in my favor? Let's say they say 3. Okay, when you see somebody with 3 factors in their favor, and it's these particular factors, would you say they have a better than 50% chance of having a 50-50 outcome or a less than 50% chance of having a 50-50 outcome, right? We're putting kind of broader parameters on it instead of sort of asking for a prediction. Like, what are the chances, what do you think I'm going to get 50-50 custody? Yes or no? Well, that depends. Okay, what does it depend on? Okay, what are those factors? What are the things I need to focus on? What are the things I can do to strengthen the chances of getting that outcome that I'm looking for, right? Those are the kinds of questions that you need to ask. And those are the kinds of questions that they can answer. But ironically, here's what I find. It's not the kind of solutions they offer up to your question. They'll usually do something more like, well, that depends. The judge is going to look at the factors in family code section, 0000, and they're going to weight those, and the heavier weighted ones are typically these things, and then they're going to look at your exes, and then they're going to kind of determine based on that what they think is in the best interest of the child, and blah 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 blah, right? You get some like sort of technical jargon like that from them most of the time is the kind of answer that you get, because we go, why can't they just explain this to me in layman's terms? Because they're not looking at it through that lens. They're looking at it through the legal lens of their job. That's how they're dissecting it. That's how they're analyzing it, through the way that they do their job. And that's what you're paying them for. That expertise, that knowledge, that perspective. Just like I always tell you guys, you have to understand how a judge looks at your case and what a judge's perspective is, because it's different from yours. Your attorney's perspective is different also. They're not coming to this as a lay person. They're coming to this through a very procedural, analytical, what's the code section? What does it say? What are all the factors? What's the da-da-da? So you have to know the questions to ask to get the information that you need to be able to do everything that you can to help ensure your case is successful, that you get the outcome that you want in your situation. And honestly, this is where a lot of my coaching comes in. Is a lot of times I'll say to clients, okay, well, have you asked your attorney this question or that? Well, no. Okay, well, let's put that on the list. Let's ask your attorney this question the next time. And then when we get that feedback, then we know what direction, we need to go, or what the court's going to look for, or what is this judge, have you been in front of this judge before? What does this judge in particular see as the more important factors? At what age does this judge typically take the child's wishes into consideration? At what, when you're asking very specific questions like that, you're more likely to get an answer that then what you have to do is you have to pick up all the little tiny rocks and then put them together to create the boulder. And what most people do is they ask a boulder question and then they get an it depends answer, because there's all these little tiny rocks that went into the process of making that boulder. You're asking this big high level question and the attorney's kind of going, well, I don't know. It depends on all the little rocks that go into it, what the size of the boulder is going to be. I can't really predict that. Okay, then let's break that down into all the little tiny rocks and start answering those questions for me so that I can then gather that up and determine for myself what my potential boulder will look like, right? Does that make sense? I hope that analogy kind of resonates or makes sense. So you have to step back and know the more detailed, simpler questions that the attorney can answer, because it just doesn't come to mind to them to offer up that level of advice. Now, not all of them. I have met a handful who are able to break it down much better for a client, but I will say the vast majority of them don't, because that's not what you're paying them to do. That's not their job. Like, most attorneys are like, you know what, a client doesn't want to pay me $400, $500, $600 an hour to sit here and break this down for them. It's not a good use of my time and what they're paying me to do. You want to have these things sort of laid out beforehand and understand what all the little pebbles are so that you can ask the right questions and figure out for yourself what the potential outcomes are. That's a great question too. Instead of saying something like, what are the chances of me getting 50-50 custody, right? When you ask a question like that, where you're asking for like this statistical analysis of, oh, you have a 75% chance or you have a 35% chance, that's where you're going to get an it depends answer, okay? A better question is something like, what are the range of outcomes that you've seen from the court in situations similar to mine? They might say something like, well, I think worst case scenario is you get every other weekend and a weekday overnight, and best case scenario is you get a 50-50. Okay, now you know where you stand, right? Now you say, okay, what can I do, or what factors do you think are strong enough in my case that there's something that I can do that pushes the needle closer to 50-50? What actions can I take to push that needle closer to 50-50 once you know what that range is? And I think asking them for a range of outcomes is a really good way to get their view of the case without saying, well, what do you think my chances are of getting 50-50? I mean, again, they're thinking of in terms of that range. They're not thinking in terms of that specific target, because they don't know if they can specifically hit that target, but they can get within a certain range of it, right? Does that make sense? Again, I hope it does. I hope, like the boulder analogy, it does make sense. It's a little bit technical, it's a little bit nuanced, and so it takes some practice and experience to kind of learn how to ask these types of questions. But you can leverage your attorney much better once you kind of understand how to phrase these things and how to get the information that will help you advocate for yourself and for your children. So if you'd like to learn more about my services and how I can help you in navigating this, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There is a link on that page where you can book a time to speak to a member of my staff and learn more about my services and how I might be able to support you on your child custody journey. See you guys next time. We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands.